since Vanessa was tragically taken from us. Not a day goes by that we don't reflect on the enormity of our loss.
That was the choked voice of the uncle, representing the victim's family, when talking about the unjust death of Vanessa Marcotte, a young, talented, and ambitious girl, but forever gone after a seemingly normal afternoon like any other. On a summer afternoon in 2016, in the small town of Princeton, a peaceful place that had not had a murder for decades, people were shocked to hear about the disappearance of a local girl. No one could have expected that just a few hours later, the entire community would be shocked by a horrific discovery in the sparse woods. And from there, a persistent investigation began, searching for traces of the seemingly invisible culprit. Vanessa Marcotte, 27 years old, Google employee, only daughter of a single mother, disappeared without a trace after a familiar jog. But the disappearance quickly became one of the most shocking murders in America at that time. If you are interested in real, dramatic, and haunting cases like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. On Sunday afternoon, August 7th, 2016, Vanessa Marcotte left her mother's house in Princeton around 1 p.m. to go for a walk, a familiar activity every time she had the chance to go back to her hometown. That day's route was a quiet forest path, not too far from home, and with few people passing by. But no one expected that it would be the last time anyone saw her alive. A witness said that they saw Vanessa standing in front of a nearby convenience store, apparently looking for water. She was still wearing her sportswear, headphones around her neck, and her phone in her hand, the appearance of someone who was just going for a short walk. However, just a few minutes later, she completely disappeared from everyone's sight. At around 2:11 p.m., Vanessa's phone suddenly lost signal. This is considered the last time she had contact with the outside world. All calls from relatives after that fell into silence. There were no cries for help, no unusual sounds. The woods were almost deserted. However, another witness recalled seeing a dark SUV parked on the side of the road, the hood open. Next to the car was a man on his phone. About an hour later, the car was still there, but the man was gone. No one heard any signs of anything unusual. No apparent struggle, no screaming, no first-hand witnesses. It was the silence that made the incident all the more puzzling. Vanessa was a careful woman, always reporting her schedule when she left the house. She had no unexpected appointments, and she had never complained about anything worrying. When it started to get dark and her daughter still hadn't returned to catch the bus back to New York, Vanessa's mother, Rosanna, immediately felt uneasy. Her mother's instincts urged her to call the police that same evening. A search was launched involving police, dogs, and local residents. The search lasted for hours, and as night fell, there was still no trace of Vanessa. What happened in the short time between her leaving the convenience store and her phone losing signal was still a mystery. But then the pieces began to fall into place, the beginning of a journey to find the truth that shocked the entire community. As the afternoon wore on and Vanessa's daughter still hadn't returned, Rosanna, Vanessa's mother, began to feel uneasy. At first, it was just quiet worry. Maybe her daughter was jogging, lost, or her phone had run out of battery. But as time passed without any text messages or calls, the mother's intuition began to tell her that something was wrong. At around 5 p.m., she took the initiative to call the local police, expressing her concern that her daughter had left home at noon but hadn't returned. It was an instinctive decision, and it was thanks to that action that the first door of the investigation was opened. Immediately after receiving the information, the authorities mobilized staff, dividing into many groups to search around the area where Vanessa might have passed. It was still light that day. The weather was favorable for checking the trails in the forest. At about 8:20 p.m., one of the teams with the dogs found suspicious tracks in a dense brush area less than a mile from the main road. The dog led the searchers straight to a hidden spot with no clear path. It seemed that no one had ever been there before. The flashlight flickered between the dense foliage, then stopped at a motionless object lying in the short grass. The searchers immediately confirmed that it was a female body. Although there was no official identity, the shape, clothing, and location of the discovery made everyone understand that the person they had been looking for all afternoon was Vanessa. The initial state of the scene surprised the investigators. The victim's body was about 60 meters from the main road, in an area with no houses nearby. The clothes were missing, and a pair of sneakers were lying not far away, showing signs of being burned. Under the dim light, there were light burn marks on the victim's hands and feet, a sign that someone might have deliberately destroyed the evidence. Vanessa's phone and headphones were also missing from the scene. This made the investigation team suspect that they had been taken away, possibly to conceal information related to the killer. Every inch of the surrounding land was meticulously searched, but the initial results did not reveal any clear clues. The case was immediately upgraded to a major investigation. The first questions began to arise. Who could have committed the crime in such a quiet area? And why did Vanessa choose the place she knew as a scene? Everything was still a mystery at that time. Immediately after the scene was sealed off, the forensic team and investigators quickly got to work. The space around the forest, which was once quiet, became cold and tense. Every trace, no matter how small, was carefully recorded, because any detail could be the key to clarifying the case. At the location of the body, apart from a scorched shoe lying nearby, no phone or personal device was found. In particular, there were traces of grass being crushed and scratched on the ground, suggesting a struggle. There were no clear footprints due to the dry soil and thick grass, but some small pieces of half-burnt paper and faint traces of gasoline were discovered around the area. The autopsy results showed that the victim died from strangulation. There were many small wounds on the body, mostly concentrated on the hands, indicating that she had fiercely resisted. Most importantly, there were strange skin cells left under the victim's fingernails, the first biological evidence that led to the suspect. The time of death was estimated to be around early afternoon, close to the time Vanessa's phone was turned off. Another unusual detail that caught the investigators' attention: minor burns on the victim's hands and face, which were not fatal but showed that someone had intentionally set the fire after the victim had died. From there, the hypothesis was put forward. The killer may have returned to the scene to cover up the traces. This behavior opened up a new direction for the investigation, searching for people who had appeared around the area during that sensitive time frame. As soon as the coroner concluded that the victim had died from strangulation and that there were signs of post-mortem burning, the investigation entered a critical phase. The investigation team immediately expanded the scope, checking the entire route Vanessa might have traveled that fateful afternoon. Although Princeton is a small, quiet town with few camera systems, the police still collected every possible data, from traffic images to the accounts of residents. One particular clue quickly emerged. A witness recalled seeing a dark-colored SUV parked on the side of the road, near the entrance to the woods, the hood open, next to a man who appeared to be on the phone. About an hour later, the car was still there, but the man was gone. The witness description was athletic build, short hair, Hispanic. From that detail, the police began to narrow down all the suitable SUV owners in the vicinity, especially those who were in Princeton between noon and about 3 p.m. On the initial list, the name Angelo Cullen Ortiz quickly became a prominent subject, residing in Worcester, not far from the scene, working for a private delivery company, frequenting the area. When first summoned, Angelo was unpredictably calm. He claimed that he did not know Vanessa and did not remember his schedule that day. However, when questioned more closely, his answers began to become inconsistent. At times, he said he had been home all day. At other times, he said he had driven out but didn't remember where. Angelo's gestures gradually became awkward, his eyes averted, his voice began to falter, all of which made the investigators wary. The police decided to request a warrant to take a DNA sample from the suspect to compare with biological traces found under the victim's fingernails. Angelo initially signed the consent form, but his legal team later argued that his client did not fully understand his rights because of the language barrier, leading to a lengthy legal battle. Meanwhile, an independent piece of evidence was discovered, a $5 gas bill from a nearby gas station, dated 2:35 p.m., the time after Vanessa's phone went dead. This reinforced the theory that the killer had returned to the scene to destroy evidence. Then came the decisive moment. The forensic results showed that the DNA under Vanessa's fingernails was a 100% match to Angelo Colon Ortiz's. It was irrefutable evidence. The police immediately approached Angelo again, but this time he was no longer calm. When asked about the DNA, Angelo remained silent, bowed his head, and did not answer any questions, a silence that was heavy and suspicious. No confession was uttered, but the truth was clear. On April 15, 2017, Angelo Colon Ortiz was formally arrested on charges of first-degree murder and robbery. The indictment was promptly filed, with more than 200 pages of documents compiling a comprehensive compilation of physical evidence, witness testimony, and travel records. Although the attorneys sought to disprove the DNA sample by questioning the sampling procedure, the judge ultimately upheld the legality of the evidence. The case moved to trial, attracting national attention and media attention. For the people of Princeton, the shock was greater than the case itself. The suspect was someone who had been quietly appearing in town, a delivery man with no criminal record, no attention. And it was this ordinary that hid the most dangerous person. The investigation was closed after nearly a year, but the echoes and the question why still could not be fully answered. It's not just a case, but a journey to find justice for an innocent girl, and a warning about the darkness that can exist even in the middle of the day. After Angelo Colon Ortiz was indicted, the case entered the pretrial phase. Over the years, the case file was carefully reviewed, and each piece of evidence was reevaluated to ensure its rigor. A series of preliminary hearings were held, in which the legal issue of taking a DNA sample from the suspect was a point of contention. The defense argued that Colon Ortiz did not understand his rights when he signed the consent form because he did not speak English fluently. However, the prosecutor argued that the entire procedure was carried out properly with the assistance of an interpreter. Even though he did not speak the same dialect as the suspect, the judge ultimately decided to reject the request to exclude the evidence, upholding the legal value of the DNA test results. In the context of the case about to be brought to a public trial, the two sides negotiated a plea agreement. The victim's family, after years of waiting, chose the less painful path, agreeing to the prosecutor's request to avoid a lengthy trial with traumatic details. In October 2022, Angelo Colon Ortiz officially pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and robbery. In court, he did not say much, only bowing his head when the verdict was announced. The sentence was announced: 20 years in prison for robbery, followed by life with a minimum of 25 years without parole for murder, a total of at least 45 years in prison. Before the end of the courtroom, Vanessa's family was invited to speak. Her mother, Rosanna, choked up as she said that her life had completely changed since losing her daughter. "I will never have the chance to see my daughter in a wedding dress, never be the grandmother I dreamed of being," she said. Those words brought tears to many people in the courtroom. After the trial, the public reaction was largely sympathetic. Many felt relieved that justice had finally been served. even though it had taken 6 years. Thousands of shares on social media expressed their condolences for Vanessa, a talented young person who had passed away too soon. The trial ended, the verdict was issued, but the echoes of the story still linger. Not only is it a family's pain, the case is also a strong reminder that safety should never be taken for granted, even in the most seemingly peaceful places. The Marcotte family's lives have been forever changed since that fateful afternoon. Vanessa's death was not only an immeasurable loss for a mother, but also a lingering wound in the hearts of friends, colleagues, and even strangers who only knew her from the evening news. A bright future was taken away in an instant, leaving a void that nothing could fill. This case is not simply a personal tragedy, but also a wake-up call for all of us, that the line between safe and dangerous is sometimes just a few steps away. In a seemingly peaceful world, evil can still hide under the most ordinary shell, and it is vigilance and proactive self-protection that is the first shield each person can create for themselves. Justice has come, albeit late. Thanks to the tireless efforts of the investigation force and the family's perseverance, the truth has been brought to light. But no matter how harshly the perpetrator is punished, the wounds in the hearts of those left behind are still something that no court can heal. In an increasingly complex society where evil can hide behind any face, the question is, are we sober enough to recognize the danger signals before it's too late? What do you think about this heartbreaking case? If you were a relative in that situation, how would you choose to face it? Leave your comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel to continue the journey of discovering the stories behind the light of justice.